what's going on with Bitcoin is Bitcoin is evolving faster than a society can digest it. And so I think you could say this is all consistent. Bitcoin was misunderstood in the year 2011. It was misunderstood by me in the year 2013. It was misunderstood again in 2015, 2017, 2019, 2021. When we first got into the space in 2020, there were people that misunderstood it, and we had massive amount of criticism when our stock was $10 a share. When our stock went to $100 a share, it was massive amount of criticism again. When it crashed to $20 a share, there was still massive criticism. When we had $2 billion of Bitcoin, people were cackling, or $1 billion, saying, oh, you lost $1 billion on this. When we made $100 billion, everybody disappeared and slunk into the shadows. And then a new set of trolls, a new set of critics came out when our market cap went above $100 billion. It's a different set of cynics, a different set of critics, a different set of misconceptions. I think you're going to see the ebb and flow of that set of misconceptions and that anxiety. It'll continue when Bitcoin is 100,000. It'll continue when Bitcoin is 1 million. It'll continue when Bitcoin is 10 million. It'll continue when Bitcoin goes to 20 million. And there's always going to be a new narrative of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It'll be a different generation. You know, the people that used to laugh and say, oh, yeah, you lost $1 billion trading in Bitcoin, they're gone. They disappeared, right? There'll be a new generation of people that say, do you think it makes sense to buy Bitcoin at $1 million a coin? It's going to trade down to 500,000, right?
Yeah.
And then there'll be a set of people that will say, you're buying it at 10 million a coin, it's going to trade to 6 million, you moron, you lost so much money. You know, this is how societies deal with new ideas. You know, the more evolved way to look at Bitcoin is not that you want to embrace it and never trust anything. The real inspiration and the promise of Bitcoin is once you've embraced it, you have the option to extend and withdraw your trust, from time to time. And if you choose to not trust the government, you can relocate your Bitcoin to a different country. And if you choose to trust a custodian, you can locate your Bitcoin with them. And when you decide to stop trusting them, you can relocate your Bitcoin to any of 100,000 other entities. Or if you go through a period of life when you choose not to trust anyone, you can self-custody. And when you decide you don't trust yourself, you can transfer your custody to another family member, right? And change. So the real power of Bitcoin is optionality. And the reason we have the optionality is because the entire movement was born out of distrust. And so there is a yin and the yang. There is a dialectic here. And you need a healthy degree of skepticism and distrust and cynicism. But once you've created the technology, you're not going to reach your full potential unless you work with other human beings. If you think about gold and why gold failed, one reason gold failed is it's so incredibly difficult to custody. And so if you look at in the history of gold, in the 20s, you had 4 great central bankers, and the central banker in Germany was Schacht, and the central banker in the U.S. was Ben Strong. And the world, was substantially on a gold standard, and the Germans had gold, and the French had gold, and the British had gold, the Americans had gold, but for the most part, the gold was either in London or in New York. The French gold was with the British or the Americans, or the German gold was with the Americans. So there's a famous story where Schacht traveled to New York City, met with the head of the Fed, Ben Strong, and Ben Strong wanted to show him the German gold, took him down into the basement of the New York Fed, and they couldn't find the gold. And of course, the message of the story is this: gold is so difficult to custody, countries couldn't figure out how to, like the entire country of Germany couldn't figure out how to custody their own gold. much less the 100,000 companies in Germany or the 60 million people in Germany. And so the reason gold failed was it was too slow and too difficult to custody, and therefore your property rights were always going to be impaired by a central actor. And, imagine the entire world running on gold-based credit on a gold standard when all the gold in the world was sitting in London and New York City, and most of it was in New York City, and we can say, oh yeah, that's a bearer asset, but not really, because 40 million companies couldn't bear it. 400 million people couldn't bear it, right? And so Bitcoin, it represents the bearer instrument, but it really is practical for an individual to take custody, and it's practical for a company to take custody. And of course, I guess what I counsel to people that are idealists is they don't trust banks and they don't trust companies. But the point that I would make is during the entire gold era, gold was so difficult to handle that no company could custody their gold, and no bank could. If we lived in a world where 40,000 banks were custodians of Bitcoin, you would have evolved from a world where there were like 8 or 6 custodians of Bitcoin custodians of gold in the entire world, right? And so I think that Bitcoin offers a promise of economic integrity, and I don't think we should rail against a bank embracing Bitcoin.
No.
Yeah. The truth of the matter is, if every country on earth embraced Bitcoin and the countries became the custodians of Bitcoin, and the only thing we accomplished was to have 150 countries custody Bitcoin, that would be more decentralized than the gold standard for hundreds of years, right? It would be an order of magnitude more decentralized than we had under the gold standard. So what we're talking about is a world where if only banks and only governments custody Bitcoin, you would be 100x to 1,000x more decentralized. And if corporations in custody of Bitcoin, you would be 10,000 times more decentralized. And of course, in a world where millions of individuals or tens or hundreds of millions of individuals self-custody, you're not like 1, 2, 3, 4 orders of magnitude more decentralized. You're like 6, 7, 8 more orders of magnitude more decentralized. So I tend to focus upon the fact that the worst case for the cynic is 1,000,000 times better than the best case we had 100 years ago, or even the best case we had ever, right, in terms of decentralized monetary integrity.
Yeah.